Hey everyone, welcome back to WuhooPoints podcast, season 2, episode 4. And I have a lot of friends named Matt. Last month was Matt Dillingham, and now I have Matt Ogren here. So you can see I have some favoritism. But this conversation is going to be slightly related to credit scores, but also slightly different and a different angle. But I'll let Matt kind of speak to that further on. But first, just introduce yourself. And I think what I like to ask too is what's a cool trip you've taken with credit card points?
Matt, thanks for having me on, first of all, and hi, everyone. Um, I think that the one, I guess the trip that I have to mention, because I think for any Chase Hyatt loyalists out there, and I think that for people who are in the points community, I think they find themselves in that Hyatt mode, is the Grand Hyatt Gainey Ranch that's out in Scottsdale. We have family out there, and all my points just are almost like auto debited right to that. We go at least once a year, sometimes maybe 3 times, go out, see family. It's a beautiful resort. It's everything you want in a Hyatt. They just did an incredible renovation. So I think that's if you're a Hyatt loyalist and you like to see different properties around the country, that's a must.
Yeah. Is it getting impacted by the category changes this year, or is it already category 8? I don't know what it is.
I believe it is leveling up, but it's the type of stay that I think you're still getting a really good the standard Hyatt redemption rate where you're seeing it like 1.8, 1.9 cents per point. So it's still it's going up, but I think it's still remaining in that value tier. And with the renovations, the price went up, but it's worth it. It's a beautiful property.
Awesome. That wasn't a planned ad, but
Yeah,
I'm also a Team Hyatt, so that's great.
yeah.
Unfortunately, this is not a Hyatt episode, although we could probably turn one into that anyways. This is still going to be about credit card scores and just a little bit of research that you've done in the past.
Mhm.
Um, but before we start all that, just tell us how you got into credit cards and thinking about this space, because not many people really think about it that much.
Yeah, well, for me, and I think this is something we're going to naturally talk about, is it really started based on some work that I was doing. I was doing some work at a previous job for a financial services company, and their target audience was people who really cared about their credit, people who were really avid users of their credit scores, and they wanted to see what they valued in a score, why they were checking their score. And so as I was doing this research, it was also coming at a point in my life where I was, newly married at the time. We're looking about how we're going to save for a house. How does your credit score come up then? It's also the time in your life when, you're just jetting off to your friends' weddings 5, 6 times a year. So it's like all your disposable income is travel. So it's like all this money is going on to travel. So then you're thinking, well, wait, could I be, is there a better way I could be doing this? Like, could this be out there? And that was kind of just that first domino into really looking into the whole reward system.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So tell me more about the research you did and kind of again what got you into it.
Yeah, so we used a lot of different research modes. We did digital research, so seeing what people had their conversations on social. We identified some key groups and brought them into online focus groups where we had them talk about their financial habits, talk about their credit scores, what they knew about it, what they thought made a fair credit score, things like that. And then we followed up with a survey where we were categorizing our different audiences and seeing their recognition of key brands, including our clients, and seeing what the favorability was, what they knew. So, this we were looking at kind of a Gen Pop audience, but then we had identified these subgroups within that.
Yeah, you were like looking at people like us.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's what we were doing. And what was fun about it was we didn't just say, okay, let's find people under 40 who make a certain income level and have a college degree. It was like people who fit certain hobbies, certain habits,
Mm,
maybe some demographics, maybe some just kind of filters, but it was really based on your like behaviors.
yeah.
So like I looked at it and I could identify one of the categories that we actually called like the deal seekers, people who like to get deals and coupons at their favorite brands. I identified as like, oh, I'm one of those. I wasn't 2 years ago, but now I'm becoming that. So it's just like a business has these flexible, audience targets.
Hmm.
That's what we saw too, that people could move in and out of these categories.
Yeah. What if you are able to share? What are some cool findings you found that was repetitive about, especially the deal seeker group? Because we're we're part of that with credit card points, trying to find the best redemptions and min maxing. So anything you
Yeah.
would share there?
Yeah, well, I think the most, the thing that really stands out, and I think it's the type of thing now that wouldn't be surprising. It's kind of the way what the whole industry is built on. But at the time, what was really revelatory is that people looked at this and it was like a hobby and like a responsibility. There was like fun and a form of like function to it. So people were doing it to get these deals, but they took it very seriously. They knew that the credit card tenants never carry a balance. Always pay things on time. Don't spend what you can't. And then pairing that with maximize your spending, spend in certain categories. Get these sign up bonuses. So people were very disciplined and very methodical, but they were also having fun. They also really enjoyed it, which I think that's what the whole, I think points game is about, right? You're being very strategic, you're being very smart, and then your reward is all these amazing trips and vacations that you get to go on because of how you've been, a smart user of the system.
Yeah, it's like a work hard, play hard.
Exactly.
That's what it really.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that research was done, you said, a few years ago. Do you think that's changed? Are there more groups now, more subgroups, or has have some behaviors changed in post COVID especially?
I think that you've probably seen a group that's just become, even more sophisticated. The one thing that I would be curious about is, this research was conducted 2016, 2017. The time since then, Gen Z has totally entered the marketplace. They weren't at our, age of being, consumers 18 plus. So we would see what their financial habits are, how things they change. And I think there's already, a lot in the public eye that, we know about how they're different from millennials, but how does their approach to, credit scores, change? How does their, feelings, how are their feelings different there? And then just with regards to, the audiences we were already looking at, I think we've had kind of super tiers elevate where now you have, people who might have been pretty casually informed about credit scores and points, and now they're incredibly informed.
Mm.
Now, they know every little detail. And so you might even have more select tiers than what we identified as, maybe 10% of the population then. And now it's like a super user tier of like 3 or 4% who are, checking out the podcast, they're reading the information, they're consuming all the news. So I think that it's become a more sophisticated audience.
Yeah. So everyone that's watching this, you are now a sophisticated user.
Yes.
So Matt, if Woohoo Group had unlimited money, which we don't, and we could sponsor you to do a update research project, or kind of, it doesn't have to be an update, just your own in terms of this demographic and these people, what would you want to look for? How would you do that? And how could it be useful to Woohoo Group personally?
Yeah. Well, I think that the most fun, and especially in a category like this, where I think that a lot of information, but it's also very personal. So you can get some unexpected things, would be to do, a focus group where we brought in some target consumers, we got them together, we got them talking about, their habits, their interests, and then, get a group that's already exposed to points and is already into the reward system and say, well, hey, like what's missing? Or what are the types of things that you like and don't like? Like what's a benefit that's out there that maybe you're not aware of and it is super helpful? Or maybe you see it, card companies promoting something and you're like, that doesn't apply to my life. I want to do something else. So I think seeing, those, conversations and motivations, which can be very personal, and people, can often have, misperceptions. And when you're doing research like that, it's not, really your job to correct them and say, hey, well, actually, that's wrong. It's your job to find out, well, why do they think that? Like, why is that something that they don't quite understand? We see this a lot, when it comes to how people think about like credit scores. They think, oh, if I open a card, that's bad. And it's like, well, on the margins, don't open 10. But like, no, your credit score is going to be fine if you're opening cards using it responsibly. Figuring out that type of stuff would be, I think would be fascinating.
Cool. I want to pivot a little bit. So we've talked about that research, but everyone watching, and I'm very interested in different credit card products. And this doesn't have to pertain to your previous research, but what makes a good credit card product in your eye?
Yeah, well, I think that there's when I'm like applying for a card, I think about a card that I keep, I
Mhm.
kind of put it in two categories. One might be a card that's good to use for regular spending, whether that's, I think about the Chase Freedom Unlimited for like your basic bills at 1.5. You think about, your Chase Sapphire Reserves, your Amex Golds for dining, that, instant return on regular spending. Then there might be cards that are good to have where you might use it pretty infrequently, but like the Hyatt card where you get that, free, that category 1 through 4 free night, and that pays for it. So that might sit in the bottom of my wallet for most of the year. But then but it's nice to have because it just pays for itself that way.
Yeah.
And for me, the sweet spot is, when you can find the cards that do both, that are kind of providing those credits that aren't too hard to maximize. They're not in too obscure categories that you think, well, what's this for? But when you can get a card that is pretty much paying for itself before you even start spending on it, then I think that's my favorite type of card. So I think that's the Sapphire Reserve. For me, that's the Amex Gold. I think those are the two that really stand out. I mean, there's a lot of other great cards that I haven't used, but I think that, especially I'm looking at maybe getting a new card, new products, that's what really makes it stand out.
Yeah. And it's interesting you said you qualified in the very beginning, thinking about a card you would keep. Because the other side are just cards
Mhm.
you just get the bonus for, run them
Yeah.
for a year, and then toss aside, downgrade, cancel, whatever.
Yeah.
Besides the bonus, I think that's obviously the big thing. Are there any other criteria you look for a card that you're, not planning to keep, just getting for 1 year? Are the things that would help, make that product better?
Yeah. Well, I think certainly any card that has an annual fee, once you get beyond the sign up bonus, you've got to have a pretty quick justification for, can I use this in a way that recoups the cost of the annual fee? So
Yeah.
I think of cards that I have dropped or downgraded. I think that's the key one, that you might get that bigger sign up bonus. You transfer the points, use them. Um, but I'm definitely not. I've got a lot of cards to annual fees, but I can go, line by line and think, here's the value I'm getting right out of them.
Mhm.
And when they change the fees, kind of looking at the fine print and thinking, when are they gonna be out? But it's you got to look at the transfer partners. You got to look at the ancillary benefits. So there's I I mean, I feel like every now and then I think I'm maxed out, that I've got, not in my spending. Gotta Don't want to use that word, but in the number of cards I have, I think maybe not going to get any more. And then there's a new product, or I find a new card and think, oh, I can use that. That's another place I can get value.
Mm. And then I see a lot of people ask me, what's a good points card or even a cashback card, but no annual fee, because a lot of people are scared of annual fees. That's a different discussion. But if, let's just roll with that. If there's a card with no annual fee, what are some important perks you think that are reasonable to come with that kind of card that people
Yeah.
should?
So for a no annual fee card, I think you've got to see benefits that are, coming in your regular spending categories, and that can also uh, even, sometimes they can be like a backup card in some instances. Like, for an example, whenever I go to, catch a ball game, if I'm out seeing like a basketball game or an Nats game or whatever, I'll always pay with my Freedom Unlimited, because I'm not sure if it's going to code that as like an entertainment or as food.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've got the backup 1.5, but if it codes as food, just like this with the Sapphire Reserve, it'd be 3% on dining.
Yeah.
So I've got that as like I know either way I'm getting at least 1.5%. So a card like that, so it's like, even on paper, you think, well, you're already getting this with the Sapphire Reserve, but actually it's kind of serving as it's serving as a way to make sure you're not, missing out on points.
Yeah. No, that's smart. And then the thing is with credit cards, they're always changing updates. Some cards are getting discontinued each and
Mhm.
every day. I think the US Bank just released a new credit card today
Yeah.
or yesterday. So you've seen a lot of changes. You kind of been in this credit card game for a decade, and it has not been the same. Again, with your research or without your past research,
Yeah.
what has been the coolest shifts or the weirdest shifts that you've kind of seen?
The one thing that's been, interesting to me is the way that you have some partnerships that are kind of under the radar,
Mm.
that can come and go pretty frequently, but you might find them and they can be super valuable. So like one that's, comes to mind for me is Hyatt and American Airlines had a partnership where you could earn Hyatt points based on flying on American, and then you could earn American miles based on stays at Hyatt's. They've kept the partnership but modified it a little bit so that you no longer are automatically earning points and miles in some
Yeah,
circumstances, which
it's
is,
so sad.
yeah, which is because, flying out of DCA, I'm a, American Airlines, loyalist. I used to have status when I was flying a little bit more. But so like a partnership like that is valuable. I also think of Chase still has like the partnership with Lyft Pink, and you get the 10 times points on Lyft rides.
Mhm.
Chase for a while had a partnership with Grubhub, or excuse me, not Chase. Lyft had a partnership with Grubhub where you got a year free of Grubhub Plus with Lyft Pink. So
Yeah.
it was like you were kind of connecting the dots where the Chase card got you the Lyft Pink, that got you the Grubhub.
Yeah.
And I would have not, paid for a Grubhub Plus membership on my own, but that was a way to like link it across, or
Yeah,
you earn.
for me, it was like Chase give you Instacart Plus for free, gives you Peacock.
Yeah,
I was able to watch the Olympics because of that.
exactly. Or like I think of Amex Platinum, I get Walmart Plus, and through Walmart Plus I get 10 cents a gallon off at Exxon, which if I really do the math from Amex Platinum, I think, okay, can I get another $20-$25 a year out of like, yeah. So I think that the way they've kind of made those smaller partnerships that aren't necessarily here's the three biggest things to know about the card, is where you can find a lot of value. But I think also those benefits can be, fleeting. They can, a year, 2 years, go away. But I always like seeing, something like that when it's available.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I it hurts me when I talk to a client, I'm updating them and I'm saying, "Oh yeah, didn't you see, X partnership ended or you're no longer getting these credits?" And they're like, "Oh wait, I didn't know that happened. I'm still charging
Yeah.
card to XYZ." How do you stay updated to all these changes? Because again, not all of them are exactly related to the card.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. I think that for the cards I have annual fees on, when I'm checking in, every week or, a couple times a month to look at the balance, make sure of charges, I kind of do the initial check to see if there's like announcements on, changes to points or partnerships or anything. I feel like most of the major issuers do a pretty good job there. And then it's also just, I feel like through, social, through, looking at the stuff that you're posting, checking out, um, obviously, Points Guy is a place that I'm looking at, here and there. I think that there's a pretty good way to kind of, disperse information. And that, sometimes I'm catching it months later, like with the Hyatt, example that I was actually checking my account and like, why haven't my Hyatt points posted yet? I just flew on American and I realized the partnership ended, last December. So my flight January 2nd or whatever it was didn't qualify. So sometimes you learn the hard way, but when
Yeah.
it's not a lot of points, it's okay. You get by.
No, that's true. I think at the end of the day, right, maybe it's only $15 here or there or a couple points. Hopefully, it's not too much of a chunk of your budget. Yeah,
Yeah.
these little mistakes are fine in the long term.
Yeah.
And I realized I forgot to introduce you in the beginning how we even know each other is we used to work for the same employer.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that company, they would do a lot of kind of predictions. So I wanted to leave one with you. With all that we've talked about, seen, could be related, or anything else weird in the credit card space.
Yeah.
What are some predictions for what lies ahead in not just 2025, but the next 5 years in the credit card space?
That's a good question. It seems like we saw, 5 or so years where it seemed like everyone was throwing, it was all about the sign up bonuses and kind of brand new products. And these really attractive earning rates that I think, Chase was on the lead in that. And then Amex was making a lot of updates to keep up with that. And now it seems like there's been a lot of movement into, I think travel perks, and specifically lounges. It feels like the lounge wars are really coming on. That's where a lot of credit card companies are saying this
Yeah.
is how we're going to differentiate. So, I wonder if, I'd love for it to be new products. I'd love to get new, cards out there with new bonuses, in some additional categories. But I wonder if you're going to see more of a shift towards services where I think Amex, Platinum offers that a little bit with your representatives, but I wonder if you could see, as AI rolls out further, if you're going to say, here's our tool, to help with your spending, help with your reservations, and that you're just going to have a smarter system to access that might be automating things, which could speed stuff up.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I never really thought about it. Like these predictions, I'm always thinking, added benefit, added product, but
Yeah,
service line, yeah, especially with the age of technology and AI, like that is a whole ball game we can't even necessarily predict what could happen.
yeah, I would certainly I would hope that it's additional, benefits and products, but I'm I wonder what it would be beyond just like a personal wish list of I don't know what the banks would be willing to put out there that would still make money back for them, since they've got to do that.
Yeah, but you don't work for them. So what
No,
would be that number one wish list that you really want that you haven't really seen in any other car?
but why don't you go first, and I'll try to mull it over.
Yeah, so the American Express Platinum and Platinum Business allow you to kind of choose an airline, a
Hmm.
credit or whatnot. I think it'd be really cool if a credit card lets you pick an airline that you can always have a transfer bonus to. Because we know we're always like, oh, when will the transfer bonus pop up? Oh, it's only 20%. What if, I told Chase, hey, I'm gonna lock in a transfer bonus to Air Canada at 15% for 2 years. Like that would be amazing, I think, because then you have that like predictability, exactly what you're getting, and you can get more value. And they know from their end. So that's one thing I would love to see in the future.
I might steal that idea. I think that would definitely
Tell everyone so that can happen.
yes, that, or and for hotels too, because yeah, I feel like the only, sometimes you get the Marriott bonus for Amex. I don't think I can remember seeing a Chase Hyatt bonus, but that one's so valuable anyway. You
Yeah,
just kind of go with
I
it.
would do even a 5% or a 2% bonus. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
so anything you would like to see, in that realm?
I mean, I would really like to see, Chase have a card that just had that regular cash back on, groceries.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the Freedom Flex now, so I'm enjoying the 1 year of getting 10 times points. And I'm obviously in Q1 now, I'm getting 15 times points since that's getting stacked on. So I've got this great grocery card until June. I think is when I signed up for it. But I'm always wishing that Chase had a dedicated card that had a dedicated bonus other than getting the Chase Freedom, 1/4 a year. So I think that one stands out. And then yeah, I kind of wish, there's my points are mostly Chase and a little bit Amex, and not having a dedicated partner to American Airlines is a bit of a bummer for me. So I think if one of those were to add that would be personally extremely beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, City they're making plans to, so might have to switch to the City ecosystem soon.
Yeah, I would definitely be checking out some city cards if they did.
Yeah. All right. I want to leave you with any last words you want to share about anything we talked about or we haven't mentioned yet, for the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would probably say, since I think we're talking to a pretty savvy group, is that I think that everyone, it might be worth every, so often you do kind of like a mini audit, talk to the Woohoo group to see, okay, where am I getting that extra bit of value? It might not be worth paying off if like every day you're consuming information, but when every so often you kind of do a refresh, almost like a New Year's resolution to say, hey, what new is out there? What else could I gain? Because things are always changing, and there can be all that additional bit of information. And I think there's no bad way to handle the points and miles, but there are always better ways. You can always go from, debit card, that's the lowest, getting a cashback card. Okay, you're getting something. Getting, you want to keep scaling up and keep getting smarter with how you're, managing your spending and how you're figuring out your points and miles.
Yeah, that's awesome, guys. I did not pay Matt to say this. We are releasing a how to do a credit card audit actually this month. So,
That's
uh,
perfect.
yeah, stay tuned for that. That
Yeah,
will kind of do what Matt just said in terms of, yeah, are you really optimizing, maximizing what you could be earning and getting benefits for? So, thank you for bringing that up.
I'll be reading it. Yeah, I need to take a look myself because I know that I know what I know, but I don't know what I don't know. So you always want to try to figure out what are those unknowns out there. The unknowns always matter in life, and especially in your in your finances.
Awesome. Those are great wise words to end on. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for your time.
absolutely. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.